Gotta look at.
Well, hello, everyone. Just a reminder that the meeting is being recorded. And for those of you that are on the phone, *6 will unmute you if you want to speak. I think everybody is pretty much muted, but you should be able to unmute yourself. If not, I can unmute you too. So Krista is on right now, and she will help us if we run into a few difficulties here. But otherwise, we'll call the meeting to order, it being 5 o'clock. And roll call. Sam, I think everybody is here except for Scott there. So if you want to mark that down. Okay, so the
And
minutes were from
Scott had a funeral today, so I don't think he's going to be in this afternoon.
Oh, yep. I'm Scott Bear from the Fair
Oh.
Board. So that's okay. No worries, John. So Scott had let me know that and sent me some information. So thank you, though, for thinking of him. So the minutes from the last meeting, if we have a motion to approve those. Someone?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting.
All right. So Martha, we'll take that from you. And Justin, are you seconding it?
Yeah, I'll second the motion.
All right. Great. Thank you. And the other minutes from the facilities, the joint meeting, those were just sent to you as informational only. They were approved last night at the facilities committee meeting. So we'll have staff reports, facilities and parks. And as John mentioned, Scott is at a funeral, so he's not able to be here, but he wanted to let us know that he hired 3 new facilities workers. It's a Brady Burgraff, Kevin Barthol, and Jacob Von Tisch. And events that were scheduled in June have been moved to July at the rec park, depending if they're open or not. It is still closed to the public, or closed to all events for right now. And then there will be another additional meeting on June 15th that we'll take another look at what happens with the Red Cedar racing season, because right now they're not racing, although they're hoping to get going soon. So that was that was the information that Scott had sent. And John, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, that pretty much sums it up.
All right, great. And just to clarify, if you remember, we had Josh that helped us at the fair, and I believe he has moved to the Neighbors. Is that correct, John?
That is correct, but he still might be able to come over, like outside the normal workday like he has in the past. I still think that he probably will volunteer at the fair if needed.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
I know
Dave,
Dave had a question.
Yes.
Correction on that meeting on the 15th. It's actually on the 9th.
Oh, that you're right. Originally scheduled on the 15th, it was moved to the 9th last night. So we can change that. All right. Louisa?
Okay, nice to see all of your faces. As you would probably guess, I do not have a lot to report because mostly we're in a holding pattern, waiting for more information as far as 4-H goes. We did have a bunch of meetings this week, and we are supposed to have written guidance either tomorrow or Monday from our Institute director. But it does sound like nothing can really happen in the world of 4-H together during the month of June. And July is dependent upon the numbers of COVID cases. And so the starting back up will be in small groups of 10 with distancing and a form that has to be filled out ahead with permission to meet. As far as I can tell, that that would be just following all the things that are pretty common sense about hand washing and social distance and all of that, but it doesn't look very good for much of anything. The state fair did cancel this year, and our state dog activities also just canceled today. So I'm trying to navigate the difficult waters of people really needing the information, and we just don't quite have an answer yet. Of course, none of this impacts your decision. You as the fair will have your choice of what to do. What we've tried to get out of our institute director and our state team today from the 4-H educator perspective is, how do we handle things like fairs if a fair moves forward at a time when University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension is not allowing in-person meetings? And the answer was pretty simple, which is 4-H families could still attend, but they would be attending basically as private citizens. And I would be able to help and support in any way I can, but I probably would not be able to join into group activities. So the things we had discussed before about the last meeting about people coming in small groups and not gathering together, those were all brought up in our meeting today and are still possible, but it depends on the number of cases. So where we're looking at in late July, at least there's some time leading into that, but I know we're going to have to pull the trigger and make some decisions pretty soon on what that would look like. And I'm sorry I don't have anything super concrete to tell you, but the dean, when pressed a couple weeks ago, said, look, if you press me, I will just cancel everything for the entire summer. So if you want to answer, the answer will be no. If you're willing to wait, then we can see how the numbers go. And I think all of us are like, well, much as we hate ambiguity, we'd prefer to be able to get back together in some way. And so that's where we're at with the state leadership. They're working really, really hard to try and figure out a way forward for 4-H, but it looks like it's going to be a not very in-person kind of summer as far as my part of it goes. Thanks. Any questions?
Okay. Yeah, Louise, have you heard anything about the State Horse Show?
No. I think the last I heard about that was that people who want to go to the State Horse Show will be able to go to the State Horse Show without the normal qualifying events. So I was, Nola had asked me about that as well. The thing that I read, I interpreted it to mean basically if people want to go, they can, and they do not have to have the normal like blue ribbon at a tiered horse event previous to the state one. I will try and send you that guidance that I got. It was from Joe Mullenberg, the same one that sent the information about the dog show. So I'll try and make a note right now to send you that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Scott joined us. Thank you. Welcome, Scott. All right. Sam, did you have anything to talk about today? I think you've heard from a couple judges.
Yep, the rabbit judge, for sure. She reached out to me and asked if we would still be even doing judging or needing any judging. And I told her how we're still kind of trying to plan that out, but we're still going to try and do our judging. And she told me that she is more than willing to still come and help us and just keep her informed. And she'll be there. And I had a couple free stage acts and food vendors reached out to me. So I told them that we'll be releasing more information soon with them, but obviously we aren't allowed to have we're not gonna have any entertainment or food stands or anything this year. And refunds will be given if they already paid in their deposit. So yeah, that's about it for that.
Okay, cool, great. Any questions for either, I guess, Louisa or Sam from anybody? If not, I took off on our agenda our individual names to do individual reports like we typically do at our meetings, and just open this up for discussion now, because I think we're in a different stage of the game where we're just trying to plan what we're going to do for 2020. As Louisa mentioned, Wisconsin State Fair announced about noon today that they canceled. And you probably read last week, Friday, Minnesota State Fair canceled. I do know that there's probably 6 or 7 fairs in the state of Wisconsin that will be canceling on June 1st, or making that announcement on June 1st. They already know they're canceling, but they are looking into, or they're looking at all of the people that they have to contact before they release that information. So it's continuing to go. As a state association, we are suspecting that probably only 30% of the fairs in the state will be held this summer in some form or fashion. As you know, fair season goes into the end of September, so maybe it'll be lucky and some of those fairs way in the fall will be able to be held, but doesn't look good for the fair season in Wisconsin this year. So a couple of the things that I had is that Mayo Clinic, Mayo Health System in Menominee, who provided all of our hand washing stations in prior years, notified us that via the vendor that provided those for Mayo, that they have canceled all of their events for this summer and fall, and therefore we won't have hand washing stations provided for them. So that leaves that up to us to contract for those. I do have 2 sources, so I'm just working on trying to negotiate a price to see what that cost is. That was pretty disappointing. Pretty disappointing. I did have another conversation with KT Gallagher, the county health department director, and explained kind of what we were thinking of doing again and any updates that we had made since the last time I talked to her, and just to see if we were still on the right track and as we move forward. And she commended us for thinking ahead and thinking outside the box and trying to make this a go, and she liked what we're trying to do as far as keeping people separate and using the facility as to our best ability to manage people. She did say, I was asking her about the June 1st recommendation, and she doesn't know what that looks like yet, but it might not be as strong depending on if there's any outbreaks between now and then, and if how the county numbers still come in and the surrounding counties around us. She suspects it might be opened up to maybe 10 to 20 people, or she, if we can manage that. And she says July's a little ways off yet, so continue planning for like 10 or 20, and then maybe it'll open up and you can have a few more people in the area. She liked our face mask idea and our signage that we can get signage from the IAFE, print that off their website, instructing people to stay home if they feel, even if they feel a little off, because as we've heard through the media, symptoms can show up, very minor symptoms, or you can get it very severely, or you can not even have it and be a carrier. So, just asking those questions and telling and watching people. No big groups is the main thing. So, and then, we talked about too about making sure that we notify all of our judges and superintendents, any volunteers that help us, that, if you're not feeling well, you stay home. If you're not 100%, stay home. Don't even come. We can make it work. So that was my update today from talking to KT. All right. And I guess let's talk first about Troy. As chairman of the Meat Animal Committee, have you had that meeting yet to talk with your committee about the meat animal sale? Because I think that's a burning question in a lot of people's minds, wondering, are we having that sale or not? And I want to know what your thoughts are.
Well, the live auction, you and I talked about the live auction.
Yeah.
And we kind of, definitely there's not going to be a live auction at the fair this year. And we are actually having a meeting. I've talked to a lot of the committee members, but we're actually having an in-person meeting this next Thursday, but I kind of wanted to get a little more direction maybe from, this meeting tonight to see, what we can do and stuff like that. So no, we haven't met in a group. Deric and I have been working with the meat lockers. Derek's been doing more now because like with the meat lockers, because of setting up like show days and stuff like that. But so we will have processed, same as before, the kids' animals will be able to get processed and stuff like that. But kind of want to learn more about tonight before, and then next Thursday we're going to get together as a group and, try to hash it out to see what we want to do.
All right, great, thank you. Do you want to talk a little bit about Deric? Did you get a chance to read that email that Amy sent us this morning at all? Amy Costello, I think that's how you say that. I don't know if you had a chance to read it. Basically, she's asking if animals could be brought in on Wednesday evening and then they go home on Friday. That's different from what we had talked about before. I'm inclined to say no, but I would like to, I guess, hear what your thoughts are.
I agree.
As the animal rep.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. No, I agree. I mean, just the way the things are going, I did not read it fully before we started this meeting, but I did read enough of it to know that the way that the direction that we're trying to go does not fit that way, just because of the amount of people that we might not be able to have in one certain area. If I'm understanding what her letter is meaning, basically she wanted to have a show with all the animals and all the people there and then disperse that way. Well, we can't do that. The only reason why we can is because we're limited to the amount of people that we can have at one spot. So that was kind of the reason why we went to this jackpot style. That way we can do a Monday through Saturday, a Monday through Sunday, whatever we got to do to space it out. So the county, with what they had said or recommended to us and whatever the restrictions are going to be at that time. So if I answered that, okay. As far as, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think, and I agree. I think, it would be great if we were at that point that we could do that, but I don't think we can move forward at all with that under the requirements right now. And even if that happens, July is not that far off. And I don't think that it's a good idea to go that route. I think our plan that we're working on right now is a good plan to keep people safe, and that's what our main focus is. So
right, and it puts a little bit of pressure on that meat animal committee to make it a live auction, which I think they're all kind of pushing. No, we don't want to go that route because of the restrictions that are had. If I can go into a little bit more detail about the meat locker plants, hey, they want to work with us. They're more than happy. So I talked to Randy's wife today, and he did talk to her. Him and Jake are going to talk and have a decision by Thursday. And I did talk to Troy about that right before I got on here with you guys. So that was what they said. The reason is because of the federal inspection and Randy's part, where Jake has that all the time. Randy has to bring in a federal inspector in order to do the meat animals part of it. So that being said, we're just waiting. By next Thursday, they will have a date of saying we can bring these animals in. As far as, hey, can you guys do your pig show on a Saturday because we can process the animals the next day or something like that. And that answer will be next week, Thursday.
Okay.
And I will, yeah.
Just for everybody's information, can you let them know who Randy is? Jake Seiler, obviously.
Yep, Jake Seiler and Randy Grossmeyer.
Okay.
Yep, from Springbrook Meats.
What about Durand?
So Durand, Troy had worked with them. They're in it too, but we want to, as far as the bigger processing plants, that's what we were working with. It sounded like those guys are really busy. Durand, Way, and was it Kessler's, I believe was the other one. And the meat animal committee has to decide, hey, are you guys want to go with 4 different meat locker plants or 2 or 3? That's their decision on what direction they want to go. Did I answer that right, Troy?
I would say you answered it correctly. We just got to meet as a committee and decide, just because that with everything being so different this year, you know, if we can get a little bit, you know, before the meeting, you know, ideas were is having forms ahead of time, you know, so say if the kids, because the animals are going to have to be sold before the fair, you know, type of deal or something like that this year, that they could have the form filled out, you know, that, hey, Deb, you bought a steer from my kid, and have all the cutting instructions and everything in advance. And, you know, we also got to look at, you know, transporting these animals, and, you know, depending on, you know, we got to somewhat prepare, you know, for the worst, you know, type too. So that way there's the forms, and can we make it where we only haul a couple animals to one spot? You know, we might be, you know, certain people in the community might actually be helping us haul animals, you know, on certain days because the meat lockers can't. And so it's all stuff we got to talk about. We're going to vote on it as a committee. Do we keep all four involved? I don't want to cut anybody out, but at the same time, I think meat lockers, as long as we let them know far enough ahead of time, they can fill those slots fairly quickly on their own. So
The other thing with the in-person contact, we're trying to keep that down, no? Is what we were talking about before.
Yep. And so we'll have more on that, you know, next Thursday.
All right. Louisa, you had a question?
Yeah, just a thought while Deric was talking about, you know, a show on Sunday and the meat locker on Monday, that wouldn't work for the swine because they can't go home. They have to go right to the kill facility. They have to be butchered. They can't go anywhere else first. So we'd have to make sure that at least with the pigs, there's no transport anywhere except, you know, terminal facility or whatever they call it. Right. So that's something I'm sure you'll think about that when you're looking at those dates, that we prioritize the pigs for, we make the show connect with the time that's open at the meat lockers. Right. So we're following those.
Yeah. And I think we had
rules.
talked about that ahead of time.
Yep. And I
Okay.
did talk to those guys about it, and that's what we're waiting on. Is it better off to have the processing done on a Friday or Sunday or whatnot, so the pigs can go right from the fairgrounds to their facility?
Okay. Gotcha. Just the way you gave the example, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wait, we can't wait a day on those. They would have to go right away. Okay.
Deric, can you explain a little bit too, you know, it's not so much a meat animal thing, again, because we haven't met, but like what the meat lockers said about them wanting the meat animal committee to keep, you know, that all these animals need to funnel through the meat animal committee, that, you know, they don't want kids to take them home and bring them in at a later date, that the meat animal committee is going to have to control of them, or, you know, explain what the meat locker said to you today about that.
So when I talked to the meat locker plant, I was explaining in the process that we went through. Most of their kids already went through this, through our fair and through the meat locker plant, as far as the guidelines that we have to go by, as far as you can show your animal or you can sell it if you do the MAQA or the so on and so forth. And if you meet those guidelines, then you can sell. Well, the meat locker plants were that they are not taking anybody else's pig or beef or sheep at this time, because they had a couple kids call in and say, we're not having a fair. Do you have that week open? And that's when I got the phone call. What's going on? I told them what we were planning, and they said, we're not going to accept these, that this is your guys' rule. We want them kids to have their project and show it, and still follow the guidelines, and then we'll take them from the fair. So they're not taking anything other than what comes to the fair and has gone through the process of what the meat animal committee has set for guidelines.
Okay. Great. Okay. I also, Deric and I kind of split it. Deric was going to talk to the horse leaders, and I said I'd talk to the dogs, so Sandy, and wondered if they'd be, because they can't have their training right now as far as dogs. They can't do their training right now because of the requirements, and they can't be together. But there is a possibility that the state, well, there is a possibility we can move it into September, because the state has allowed us to do things post-fair if everything opens up. So they met, and if they can start training on July 13th with a show date of September 26th, they would be willing to do the show, the dog show in September. If they go any further than that, they don't think that'll work. So the key factor there is to see what's happening on July 13th with the health orders and the advisories and so forth, and see what type of things that 4-H even allows to be happening. Other than that, the dog project members, so that they don't lose everything, can enter in vet science. There is a category in vet science where they can do posters, and if you're enrolled in the dog project, so then they would meet that requirement for exhibiting in that project if they're carrying that. So that is an option. I guess I'd like to know how the rest of the Fair Board feels about holding that in September, if it works. Or are we just saying, or I guess we can also tell them, nope, we're just going to let them do vet science. So I guess I'd like to know what the rest of your thoughts are. Anybody?
I don't have a problem with pushing it back. As long as everything's reopening and they can get practicing, I mean, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, thanks, Justin. Maybe we could just do a poll. Deric, your thoughts?
I agree. Why not? I mean, at this point, they're just suffering because of what's going on. So I think them having something or willing to go that route, I think is great. So I'm okay with it.
Yep. Let's see, Cheyenne, thoughts?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with what they all said.
Okay, cool. Scott? Fair? You have to unmute yourself, Scott, or I can unmute you.
There. Better?
Yep. Oh, now I probably just muted you. I was trying to do it. Try it again, Scott. I can't get you unmuted. There you go.
I agree with everybody else.
Okay. Ron?
I think we got these individuals that want to do this. I think it would be a good idea.
All right. Okay, so we'll continue working on that. I'll let Sandy know that she can move ahead with that plan if it still works with her. Typically, they train for 14 weeks. They're going to bump that back to 10 weeks to try to make that September show. That means if that's our last show of the season or of the fair, then that would start our 30-day count to get our state reports in. So depending how that goes. So, and you know, I think we'll encourage those members to enter something in vet science just in case this doesn't happen, because that always could be, you know, a possibility that we won't be able to have that dog show.
I think that's a great idea.
So,
In fact,
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think it's a great idea.
I forgot Martha.
Martha didn't get to vote. I'll mute my.
Okay.
No, she didn't. Sorry.
Go ahead, Louisa.
I was just going to say.
I'm just wondering, is it still going to happen then at the fairgrounds?
Yes, if we can open the fairgrounds. So there's two things that happen. Everything has to be a go as far as the fairgrounds can be open, because right now they're closed, and that the order for the number of people changes by the time July 13 comes so that she can do her training. Now, whether they take small group trainings and bring them in, you know, instead of the whole groups coming in at whatever typical night that was that they did dogs, you know, there's things that have to be worked out, but gives them an option to still show their dogs. Okay, Louisa, sorry.
That's okay. I hate talking over other people. Zoom is always so awkward that way. I was just saying that the dogs is a great example of needing needing to make sure that we move forward with a plan A and a plan B. So I think everything, if we can think about youth exhibits for each category and think about the plan, the preferred plan would be as much person as is safe. And then the less preferred plan, but also better than nothing, would be some kind of virtual option or a fallback. So in the case of dogs, it's great you already have one. Like there's something easy you can do. So let's think about that as we're trying to create something great for the youth, is like, what's the plan B or C that we could offer if our numbers are bad and KT and the health department says no, and we don't open up the fairgrounds. So then is there a virtual, some other way of showing or whatever? So I love that with the dogs that you've already thought that through. And I don't have enough experience with the fair to even have an idea of what some of those might be. So just asking you all with more experience with the fair to put on that creative thinking cap like that, I think that would be really helpful to the youth. And I think the calls I'm getting from parents are like, people are really depressed. They're really tired and they don't want to do virtual things. So maybe after a little break from school, as we're getting into July, virtual will start looking better than nothing, but I'm hoping we can offer them something else. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep, great. Thank you. Good, then we can move ahead with that plan B and A and B on that project. Deric, you were going to reach out to the horse group. Did you get a chance to do that?
Yep, I did. So they wanted to have their same dates that they have, but they're looking into the restrictions on what is set forth by the 4-H. And right now, by the sounds of it, there isn't none. I mean, there is some. I mean, you can't meet. Is that correct, Louisa?
That is correct, and it looks like today it was extended essentially through June. You can request to meet, but it's a pretty lengthy process, and you'd have to have a lot of things taken care of before the dean would approve that. They're working on that, like an actual form that we'll all have to fill out. They did mention that June, if the numbers look good, that they're going to keep encouraging people to do it as many things as possible virtually, but they are going to allow what they call no contact meeting. And that's very carefully, they're going to give us more examples, but that would be like roadside cleanup with your club, where everybody comes in their family pods and they don't interact and they don't touch each other and they don't share food and they stay distanced apart. They each take an assigned piece of the road. Or cleaning up the nursing home gardens, where each person would be assigned a piece of it. So they're calling it like the one youth at a time type thing. So you would have like a project leader and a youth working together, but in a no contact. So outside, 6 feet apart, wearing a mask. I mean, lots of like health considerations. And then when we all sort of push back that our rules say that adults shouldn't be alone with children, they are going to modify the language in that. But they're working with language for all of extension for volunteers. So it's pretty complicated because they have to take into consideration master gardeners, food preservers, naturalists and things like that. But 4-H, we're kind of a special organization. So it's, I'm afraid I don't have an exact answer, but it doesn't look really good for June for there to be, like 20 families showing up with horse trailers to practice together at the arena, because the chances are really good you're going to have those group interactions. They can ask and we can ask. And I'm, standing by ready to support people's requests and the safety measures in whatever way I can. My boss would have to approve that, and basically any larger group things have to be approved at the dean level. So you can imagine there's some time involved in that. You have to plan ahead quite a bit.
Yeah, and they were asking for like
not an easy answer.
Right, but they were
5.
asking for like 5 or less, and they wanted to do it during the week and not as a group. That way they can get their 2 ride times in and their safety checks in, and that can be honestly, like she said, done in July. Just looking for that kind of an answer, but from what you're saying, it's probably going to be till July.
Yeah, it might be till July. June, later in June is still a question mark. The first 2 weeks of June, last I heard, were like no in-person anything. But like I said, we're I'm supposed to get written guidance on that. Documents are still being edited, so hoping to get that tomorrow or Friday, and I will share that, of course, with the whole 4-H community and with you guys, for that matter, since it impacts the rest of our summer here. But I think the tough part for everybody, and think about the complex decisions being made at health departments and for universities and things like that, is everything's dependent on the numbers. And every time we say, hey, things are looking good, and then we have people get together over Memorial Day now in a week or two, we're going to have to watch out, because there might be that, that rebound numbers of people hanging out. And, I know a lot of my 4-H kids are in Minnesota right now with their grandparents, right? So Minnesota is having a pretty serious increase in their numbers and struggling with ICU beds. So they're our neighbors, and we do a lot of crossover here in Dunn County with Minnesota. So if Minnesota is concerned about the number of hospital beds, and we have a lot of people with Minnesota have cabins here in Dunn County, I don't know. I mean, fingers crossed. That's all I can say. I'm totally praying that we just keep the numbers controllable, and then we'll be allowed to do some of those things that we can kind of mitigate the risk factors. And as Troy keeps saying, it's people's choice. But 4-H is not going to allow people to get back together if they feel that it's dangerous, because we're about taking care of our youth and making sure everybody's safe.
Nope. So I guess that's what we're waiting on in a nutshell. That when the restrictions go off, we can start up.
All right. Okay, so I think, is there any other animal things that you had that you wanted to talk about, Deric? As far, this is also new, that I don't think you've really had time to sit down and put together a plan or anything yet, as far as what happens on Monday, what happens on Tuesday, and so forth, and who we're bringing in to have their projects judged at certain days.
No, I actually have thought about it, but there again, I can't do anything, or we can't. I can't bring anything to you. I should say it that way. As far as until these meat lockers and the meat animal committee gets together and figures out, okay, this will work, and then the meat locker plans. So say, okay, this for the beef, and this for the pigs, and this for the sheep. As far as the other shows, I think you can plan that accordingly, Monday through whatever days we have with the meat lockers are going to tell us. But as far as clothing and stuff like that, so as far as that, I think that we can plan on those. Just it's the meat animal projects that are we're just going to have to wait a week on.
Okay, I was more thinking about rabbits and chickens, and if you wanted to start putting together a schedule of when we'll do those projects whatever to keep it apart. And I think, but maybe that waits, so we don't have so many people on the ground, so we might have to wait to find out what those meat animal dates are.
Correct.
Is what I'm hearing.
And that also, some of what we were hearing from our institute and Nadine is gatherings in basically not in enclosed spaces. So I think we want the bigger and more open spaces as much as possible. When you think about rabbits and chickens in that little space with lots of people in cages, we're going to run into each other. Yeah. Can we move that aside? Can we move it to the bigger arenas? And the good thing about everything else being canceled is, gosh, we should take advantage of all that space. So it's going to be tricky for scheduling, because I
think that's what we talked. Yep, and we talked about that before, about putting it underneath the oak tree, and having it outside, and not setting up pens. Basically everything's working out of what you have, whether it be the rabbits are in the back of a truck, or the cattle by the trailer or underneath the canopy. Everything's that way. So.
Exactly. So, okay. Did you have anything else, Deric, about animals that you wanted to bring up?
I guess I've been talking a lot, but as far as
that's okay.
Well, there's just a lot of questions, and we're trying to get them answered as much as we can. Like Louisa was saying, I'm sure you got enough emails too, and Facebook messages about stuff. But the thing is I think what everybody's kind of looking at is, you're right, a date. But I like I said tonight, we can't give them that just because we're waiting for the meat locker plans.
Right.
As far as the other dates, I think once that this goes through, and we know more, I think we should get together so we can, plan on that with, I know Martha and stuff with I think you're the clothing and that kind of stuff, that building, and how we're going to bring people in and out, and we'll know more of the guidelines. But yeah, that's pretty much it that I have. But and understanding the way we talked about the jackpot style, and however you want to call it, working out of your car or your trailer or whatever, I think that's just a miss. People are not understanding it fully about what we're trying to say. We're not trying to say don't come, it's going to be virtual. We're just taking the guidelines as far as this is keeping the social distancing and bringing everybody together by doing it this way and not allowing you to set up in the barn. So I've been trying to tell people as much as I can that, but it's just the understanding of it.
Deric, I know you don't need extra work, but if it's possible to send me an email, kind of rounding out what your ideas are, I'd like to put that in the courier for June 1st, because I think that will avoid us all getting a lot more emails and questions. So we can tell people straight up, we don't know yet, but this is what we're looking at. But I'd love some help figuring out how to explain that. It's not like people have one idea in your head, you've got a different idea. I want to make sure we're explaining what we're actually talking about here.
Yep, and I think I drafted up something that I sent out. Deb, would you be all right if maybe I used what I sent to you last week? I can use that for Louisa to help explain some of this, if that's okay. You think that's all right?
Yep.
Okay.
I think that's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. As far as the non-animal exhibits, if we're done with animals, I'm going to ask a favor of Martha and Cheyenne, if you two can team up together to work on those non-animal exhibits, because Cheyenne, obviously there's not going to be any advertising needed, and Martha, we don't have a commercial building. So, and I know Martha worked with Bev a little bit on setting up stuff and doing things. In my conversation with, so I'm hoping that you two will work together a little bit on this plan, but in my conversation with KT today, I kind of outlined what we were thinking, because I just get her take on it, and how I explained it is that we would use the commercial building for non-animal exhibits, and we would schedule a time when families could bring their exhibits to the fair, and we would have one door open, possibly, most likely the west end, or I guess we could do the east end, it doesn't really matter, but have one door open and a scheduled time. Everybody would stay in their car, and then they bring in all of their exhibits, and they would just have their tags all on there and drop them, and then we can have a small group of volunteers then that will kind of separate those all out, and they of course will go home because there won't be any conference judging or anything. It'll just, that's off the table this year because of the whole plan. So then once we have a big space in that commercial building that we can set tables far apart to go through all of that judging portion of it. KT was fine with that. She said that with that, she was familiar with the space out there, and she said that sounded like an acceptable plan as long as we're not allowing a lot of people in to look at the stuff. And I said, nope, there won't be anybody because the general public won't be allowed in. So it'll be just a matter of I guess setting up the days for drop off, and then having tables there and some volunteers that are willing, and we'll probably pull in some of the superintendents that are willing to help sort those projects out and move them around. I don't know if Cheyenne and Martha, if you can help with that piece of the puzzle, and we'll try to figure that out.
Yeah, that would work for me.
Okay, great. Martha? You're still muted, Martha, but that's okay. Just shake your head.
Yeah, it's fine. Yep, we're good.
Yep. Right. And, I think we can still make this work, and it won't be, the fair is not going to look the same by any means as what it did before, but at least they're going to be able to have their exhibits there and bring them in. And keep in mind too that one of the requirements is that we do some kind of a public display of those exhibits so we can look at the live stream version of the animal shows as far as that is, and as far as the static exhibits, they would just be, we could just like shoot pictures of the different areas and we could just put those on our website, and that would take care of that requirement. The DADCAP is actually being pretty lenient this year, knowing the situation that everybody is under. So if you're trying to go through something, they are willing to just about work with anything that we come up with as a plan to keep people safe and allow the kids to do that. So that's nice to have that flexibility from them in order to do that. Let's see.
Can I, Deb?
Yes.
So
Yes.
on that note, as far as when the projects are being judged, that's kind of what we talked about before, that we're just kind of, is that what you're talking about with the camera, just kind of videoing it, correct?
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
live all the time. We just got to find somebody to help us out with that then.
Yes. And I think, if people even have, are willing to, we've got the tablets that we can record video with, and so forth. I didn't want to rent the laptops that we use this year, so somehow we'll have to logistically figure this all out. If we have to rent laptops, we'll have to for the judging. And maybe we go back this year that we have manual judging sheets. I hate to do that because it's really a step back and it puts a lot more work on Sam to enter all of that, but it's kind of an unusual year. So, I think that as we move forward, we'll figure that out, and maybe we can borrow some equipment too from some people that'll help us with that. So, working through that piece.
Yeah, I might know somebody that can possibly do that for us, and with the judging and stuff, and up or live, have it shooting live type of deal. So.
Okay, sounds good. Great. It was kind of late in the day because I got bogged down with some state things today with State Fair getting canceled. So I didn't get my checklist completed in time to get it to you ahead of time, but I did send it out. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that, but there was a cancellation modification checklist that I started putting together so that we wouldn't forget anything. I did email it out. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there, and I'm sure I don't have everything included on there, but one thing I wanted to bring up is most of those, before the press release went out and after that meeting, I had indicated to the newspapers, because I got a call within 10 minutes after that county board meeting about the fair. So I had created a statement already that we would be releasing a press release at 11 o'clock the following morning. And that took that away. I didn't have to worry about it. They were quiet until then. So the main reason I did that is because I wanted to be able to contact like our carnival and the racing association and the reserves and NTPA and so forth, and get the word out, Knights of Columbus and Fish and Game and stuff, because this is their livelihood too, the fair. They work for us, and Knights of Columbus is, they earn money for their nonprofit, and now we won't be needing their services this year. So I wanted them to know from us instead of reading it in the newspaper. So I started a checklist. So the top part of it is pretty much all done. Justin, have you been able to contact your people? Tim was on we had a District 2 call, and Tim was on there, so I had talked to him before that to give him a heads up, and that was right at the time that we knew we were canceling. So he's taken care of, and I already got a rider to move that contract to 2021 from him. But have you talked to the rest of them?
Yeah, I've talked to everyone now. I talked to the HG or Rob Monlock. That was the only group I hadn't talked to yet. Yeah, they were just pretty much all wondering what was going to be going forward, if we'd be able to move those contracts to the following year. And I said we had a meeting tonight, and I'd let them know more after tonight. But yeah, I mean, most of them were just wondering if we could transfer those contracts to the following year. And I said that would probably we'd be able to work some out along them lines.
Yeah, and we're finding throughout the whole state that a lot of the people are willing to do that, and they're anxious to do that because then they know that they've got something to look forward to as far as 2021. So yeah, that's great if they're willing to do that. Excuse me.
Yeah, and so that's on the free stage. The only I did look through your list quick. I didn't know if you contacted the people that you get the table and all the curtains from for the commercial building. You probably won't need all those curtains hung up. I didn't see that on the list, and all the tents too, around the fair.
The what? The tents? Yeah,
Yeah.
I contacted the tent company and canceled that. Pipe and Drape I had not. I kind of forgot about them on my list, so I will add them, that we can send them an email. I have an address or an email. I'll just email them and let them know. Unless Martha,
You're
have you
gonna
talked
need
to them yet?
those
Or?
tables though.
We actually have a.
No, you're gonna need those tables.
Yeah, but when I don't think we will, because I have to double check to make sure where they ended up. But when the DAV closed, all of those tables that they had at the banquet center, they're all stored at the rec park right now. Menominee Youth Hockey and the Humane Society made an agreement and purchased those tables, and should be able to use those all. So hopefully we'll never have to rent tables again. So, but so I'll put a note there to follow up on that. And do that. So I'll add that to the list.
And one other thing I had was on the deck we bought for a free stage. I was just curious what everyone's thoughts were on that. The city's not going to allow us to put it up because of the plans, and they need to be engineered, and they wanted it from the builder or whatnot. I didn't know if we should be contacting Lee's and be putting it on one of their auctions, their online auctions, and that'd be you could probably use that money to help fund the fair partly. I don't know what everyone's thoughts are on that.
Okay. And I had that come up. I thought when we got towards the end, I'd bring that up, but thank you for bringing it up now. Actually, I'm going to try to share my screen. I have a photo I want to show you. Hopefully this will work. Okay, can you see a building with some snow? Everybody? Okay, great. Okay, so Menominee Youth Hockey, of course, they have asked us before whether they can put a sheet of ice in the food court. And in the winter, they wanted to put boards up and leave them up all year round, and wanted to know if that's going to work. And we had originally said, well, it wouldn't, it really wouldn't work because it'd be right in that free stage area is where they were talking. So that would be close to like the locker rooms that they have on that end of the building. Well, since then, they've also approached us with the idea of putting up a building that's that you can see at the bottom here with the blue sky. This is what Chippewa Falls has for an outdoor hockey rink. And they're talking about trying to construct a building like this, put that in the free stage area. And they would use it in the winter for ice. And then that would become our new beer garden and free stage area. Just thoughts. We wouldn't have to fence it. We wouldn't have to rent a tent anymore, which the tents are very expensive. The idea was that they were going to come out and talk to us at the April meeting in person, and we would walk out there and look at it, because I thought we could be meeting at the grounds, but obviously that's not helping or not happening. So your thoughts on what your thoughts are on if you think this will work? This would be the inside of it.
I think it would work. It'd definitely take some planning and some, a little bit of thinking involved, but it definitely would work. And like you said, you wouldn't need a tent then, and it'd definitely work for a beer garden. So.
Okay. The only part would be.
Would we be able to put a
challenging part would
stage
be
in
the-
there?
Yeah, that would be the only part, is that the stage, whether, that's why it's gonna take some work, and we're gonna have to meet out there in person with them, whether we still put some kind of a stage on the outside of it, on the end of it, like this shows the inside version, and have the stage out there, and then the plexiglass walls could come down, and then the stage would be out there. That would be a part of the whole discussion, but I think we need to take a look at this, because if we can get something built for us that's not going to cost us anything that we can use, that's kind of a good thing. But of course, that would all have to be approved by the county. There's a lot of different steps that have to go into play to even get this to happen, and it's not going to happen this year, so at all, because there's a lot of things that have to happen, including money. So if we can meet in person out there in June, it'd be nice to meet with the chair of that committee that's working on this, to have him come and give us his ideas of what they are thinking, and so forth. Ron Score's got his hand raised. Cool.
Is that going to take care of our fair building too, if they do that? You know, that's going to be a pretty big building that they're going to build.
It would be the same size as what we were looking at for a tent. It's 100 by 40, and that's what the size of the tent that we were going to rent for
Oh, it's not going to be
free stage
it's not going to
this
be a
year.
regulation ice arena.
No, it's a half.
It's not going to be a
like half.
regulation. Oh, okay.
Right. It's got a different name. I can't remember what the name that hockey calls it, but it's called it's like basically a half sheet. So it would be about like if you took the half of the rink, and then it's a little bit narrower and a little bit longer. So, but no, the intention is that we would not lose the fair office or anything else. And I, told them that there's underground wires and water pipes there that would all have to be moved possibly, because we're certainly not going to want ice on top of, or concrete on top of all that if we ever spring a leak. So they know that it's going to be a chunk to pull off. So Dave Bartlett, do you have any comments? I know you're on the call.
Not really. You're definitely correct. It would have to go through the county board. I believe their agreement was that they would build a building in that area by a certain time, and that time has passed. And we tried working out a new agreement this last year, and they didn't it didn't work out. So I guess this would probably, if they wanted to do this, it might be more of an incentive to work out a new agreement, but it definitely would have to go through the county board.
Yep, correct. I told them that too, that this is going to take a lot of planning to get this all pulled together. So it's not a matter of just throwing up some boards and pouring concrete. It doesn't work that way. So, but I wanted to share this idea with them. That goes back to our original question. Do we sell that decking that we have, or do we hold on to it for a while?
What do we really got to use it for? We have a use for it?
Only, I'm going to stop sharing. You've looked at that picture probably long enough, but the only thing would be is if this didn't ever come to play, and we could, well, I guess we're not going to use it anyway, because the city won't, we have to beef it up so much that we went to plan B anyway. So I don't know that we'd have any other use for it.
We really don't have a use for it now, correct? Since
Correct.
Guidelines, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I guess if we don't have a use for it, we might as well move on with it, huh?
Yeah.
I would second that. I mean, it's taken up quite a bit of space up in that upper building, which I mean doesn't use a lot, but I mean the longer it sits there, the more unvaluable it becomes.
Right. Let me ask you this, Dave. Do you do we have can we just go ahead and sell it? Or do we need any kind of approval from you guys, from the county board, meaning, and from facilities?
It's a good question. That was a budgeted item for that building, and the materials were bought through the budget.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think it better come to the facilities committee and go through them.
Okay.
You know, a recommendation
good.
from your group to facilities. I don't know if it has to go any further than that. It's not a large sum of money, you know, compared to what some things are in the county, but I think it would definitely have to go through that committee at least.
Sounds good. Thank you. John, can we put something on the next meeting agenda for facilities?
Yep, I'll get it on there.
Thank you. All right. Let's see, I gotta go back to my notes here. Does anybody else have any other things that they want to discuss tonight about moving along?
Yeah,
Before we,
I heard a story that Barron County Fair is going to have a drive-through fair. Is that true?
I had not heard that. I just talked to Kevin today. We were talking about different options. They're really hanging on the fence there. Don't know which way they're going. I've also met with Pierce and St. Croix County this week to help them along with their fairs. They're going to the county board in first part of June for both of those fairs to find out where they're at. Barron County had, the last Kevin and I had really had a hard conversation about how their fair was going to look. They were leaning to an all or nothing. So that's all I can tell you, Ron.
Well, a lot of people talk up in the northern part here, so.
Yep. So, Sam has been working on the virtual fair that we were going to put out there in case we didn't have a fair. We shared it last night at facilities. Do you have it pulled up, Sam, or not? Your virtual fair? I thought maybe you guys would like to see this and she can talk about it a little bit and what it would look like. That we can get hopefully people excited and we'll meet some of our educational pieces of it. So I will, I think down at the bottom, if you pull it up on your screen, Sam, do you have a green thing that says share screen?
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
It says host disabled it.
Okay. Let me see.
Do you remember how to do that? Otherwise, I can tell you.
Yep, I got it. I am going to, okay, try it now, Sam.
Okay.
I just made you a co-host with me. You might have to click on it again. If not, I can quickly probably pull it up on my screen and share it.
Can you see it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I figured it out. Okay.
Okay. So did you want to go to the preview? Yeah, there we go.
Yep. Okay, so this is the virtual fair site that I was designing. And so this is what, if you would type in the website or the link or whatever, this is what will come up first. And I started with some of our fair history that we have on our website. And then as you go down, it goes into a virtual walkthrough of all of our animal barns. So we start with Department 1, dairy, and all of the animal pages kind of look the same. I just described some of the breeds of the animals, some interesting facts that people can click through. Then there's terms for each breed. And then I have put in some fun like kid activities for different ages. And so yeah, that goes through, every animal has their own page. And there's all that. And then after you go through every animal barn, there's a non-animal barn where then it has all of our non-animal exhibits. And probably 95% of the pictures I put on here are all pictures we have taken at our fair. So it will be like literally walking through our fair. So yeah, and then I listed all the departments, and then I described them, what people can enter in them, included a bunch of pictures and some more activities. And I have a results page that we can update when judging starts. So we can post some pictures of judging happening and posting that. And then I have some information about our carnival, some pictures. And then I added what we've had for entertainment for the last couple of years. So yeah, that's about it.
Great. So it kind of takes care of like the educational piece that we talk about as part of our mission statement. Do you want to? You can probably stop sharing now, Sam, unless somebody has a question or anybody wants to see a page.
I think you did a very good job on it, to be honest with you. It looks really nice.
Thank you. It was a lot of work, but I really wanted to hit a lot of that ag education that we seem to not always hit head on as much as I'd like to. So I tried to go as much in depth, but try and keep it interesting.
I think you did that. Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Deric. This has also been shared with the state association, and I think Sam's got a couple calls from other fairs that are trying to figure out how they can pull this off, because they're kind of impressed with it. So kudos to Sam for thinking outside the box and putting this together. And the other part of it, we'll tie this to our website, and then we can also use this then to live stream some of our shows on that result page too. So it all can be tied together. So we wanted to share it with the rest of you to make sure that you're all aware of it in case somebody asks you about it. So great. Back to my agenda notes here. Does anybody else have any other well, wait a minute, I should go back to the agenda. As far as the Friends of the Fair, they're not on here. The Fairest of the Fair, I talked to Angela today, finally, we connected, and her request was to put the Fairest program on hold, which we had already talked about last month, that we were gonna do that, so I conveyed that message to her too. She is looking at helping somebody else form a committee and actually getting some more people involved and revamping that whole program. So I'm going to take the Fairest of the Fair off the agenda. We don't have to talk about that anymore till we get a proposal back to bring it back. We're looking at it as a state right now, debating whether there will even be a Fairest contest in January at the convention, because right now, what is the Wisconsin Fairest of the Fair travels all over the state and goes to all the fair, or visits a lot of the fairs, and she's actually a state employee and works at State Fair. Well, State Fair is canceled now, so we might be holding her over for next year and not even have a contest. So there's quite a few counties that are not having their Fairest program this year just due to COVID, because how do you do it with the restrictions that are out there? So we will be taking that off the agenda and till that comes back as a proposal. Fair board appointments, did anybody talk to anybody? I know Deric had somebody in mind that he was going to maybe speak to about taking Bev's spot. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to Missy.
No,
Probably
Missy,
not.
no.
Oh,
Nope.
okay.
She
We've
had
had
a lot on her
everybody's had a
plate
lot.
too. Yep.
Yeah. So we still have the vacancies. So keep on looking for somebody. Consideration of reports, we have nothing. We didn't have a meeting in March and so forth, and I think that we have enough planning to get done so we can allow people to know what's going on. What are your thoughts of meeting in 2 weeks?
I think
we
it's a
need
great
that
idea.
because, yeah, we'll know then the meat animal, and I think we'll know, we can start putting a lot of different plans out there, or looking at our plans. So that would be, let me see, what date is that? That would be, today's the 28th. The 11th, would that work for most people? Okay, June 11th. Hopefully we can meet at the ground so we can actually sit under the pavilion and actually social distance and really put together a good outline, maybe get some big sheets of whiteboard or something that we can actually like create some charts and different things. So we know, we'll know more by then about what days animals be going to market and different things. So, and things change all the time with this COVID stuff. So we will join again on June 11th. And unless anybody else has anything, I guess the meeting will be adjourned.
A question. I sent you a message,
okay.
but you're busy running the meeting. Did you miss Friends of the Fair, or did I miss something? You said it was on the agenda. I saw it on the agenda, but then you went right to the fairist.
Oh. Yeah, but we haven't heard from Kathy, so I'm not sure what she's doing. So I didn't miss it. I just said that we haven't.
You don't know anything. So. Okay, thank you.
Nope, don't know anything. So I reached out to her to see if there's anything happening, and she's probably just, the dairy breakfast, anything that she would always do this time of year to get out and promote the fair and to try to raise some money, she can't do either. So just kind of on hold. So. All right. Is there any other questions or any other items anybody wants to share?
Yeah, I do. I guess just a question. I guess on June 11th, can we go over some of those dates as far as judging, since we'll know more by then with everybody? Put that on the agenda, or?
Yeah, to schedule the actual, come up with a plan of what's going to happen when.
Yes. That way we
Yeah.
can
Yep.
at least get something out, even if we have a few things missing.
Right. Yep. And that's what I'd like to focus on then. Oh, and one other thing I should tell you too is that we have not opened fair entry. We can hold off, and I held off purposely. Typically we open it on May 1st, right after we close the 4-H things. However, fair entry is allowing any fair that uses their product, if they do not have a fair this year, do not use fair entry, the fee that we paid would be rolled over to next year. However, if we open fair entry, then, we have to pay it. So we're purposely waiting until June 15th as our kind of like drop dead date that we'll open it. That should still give kids enough time to enter their stuff. And I think Louisa had that date and was going to put that out in the Courier that it'll be open then. I thought that's another money that we can save if we don't use it and not open it. So, okay. So that'll be good to have that meeting on the 11th, because then we'll know if we're going to proceed with that June 15th date. So, all right. If nothing else, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye, everybody. Stay safe.
Sam, you want to hang on a second and we'll talk about the Historical Society?
Just a second. Yep.
Stop recording.
Yeah, I can't get it to stop.
Oh no.
Huh. I don't know why it's not doing that.